In today's episode, I chat with editor extraordinaire Ariel Keith of Scarlet Quill Editing. Providing multiple editing services, Ariel has experience working in both fiction and nonfiction, aiming to bring an honest, supportive, and quality work ethic to all her clients. You can tell just by speaking with her that she truly values each opportunity to help make an author's dream a reality. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alrighty, welcome back to Between the Edits. Today I have the privilege of interviewing Ariel Keith. She is a freelance editor and proofreader for both publishers and indie authors, and so I'm really excited to get to speak with her today and share a little bit of her experiences. Ariel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Good to be here.
Awesome. And so why don't we just start off with telling me a little bit about yourself, both personally and then professionally, how you got into editing.
Well, I began proofreading for the Lions Press as a freelancer back in 2002. And it was one of my first jobs out of high school. And I was really grateful that somebody gave me a start. They gave me a proficiency test. And I had someone else, a friend working there, that she put in a word for me. And I did that for 4 years, nonfiction, mostly nonfiction. And then I took 16 years off to have some children and raise them to a sort of stable state. And then I started freelancing again 3 years ago for several publishers. By this time, Lions Press had been bought by Rowman and Littlefield, which is an academic publisher. Lions Press did a lot of travel guides and hiking books. And then Rowman and Littlefield does a lot of textbooks and academia. And then they got bought by Bloomsbury while I was working for them. So now I continue to work for Bloomsbury and the parent company of Lions Press, which is now called Globe Pequot, and a couple other publishers. And it's been an adventure. The publishers give me a steady stream, and then I'm hoping to branch more into fiction for indie authors because that's the funnest, to help bring something that's never been seen before to the world.
That's very cool. Yeah. So when I saw on your LinkedIn that you do, editing services for both publishers and indie authors, that was one of the things that I was really excited to ask you about is like, what's the difference between the two types of work? I'm sure it sounds like for the type of the publisher that you work with, there's more academic text, right? And so that would be probably a whole different game than doing editing for indie authors, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I do copy editing for the publishers, and there's name date citations, there's bibliographies, there's occasional fact checking, not usually too much of that. But as an editor, you're doing technical aspects of grammar,
Hmm.
punctuation, and with indie authors, it's much wider scope where you could have an experienced author that needs a light copy edit, or you could have somebody that's more new and they need quite a bit of developmental editing.
Hmm.
Um, but you have to kind of take a look at an independent author's work and kind of tell them what you think, and then they have to decide if they want to, purchase your developmental edit package or your copy edit package, whereas the
Right.
publishers pretty much tell you this is what you're doing and this is the rate. Accept
Right.
or deny. You can accept the book or not, but you know what you're getting into.
Right. So that's interesting. So it sounds like, and maybe a lot of independent authors who might be listening to this, who have looked into traditional publishing from the author's perspective will kind of get that same feel of when you work with a publisher, right? There are certain things that are not flexible that, are just part of working with the publisher. So it sounds like
Mm-hmm.
it's very similar when it comes to the editing side of things.
Mm-hmm. I would say if an independent author is trying to decide to work with a publisher, they should investigate very carefully as to what sort of developmental editing is done, because
Hmm.
different publishers will do that differently. And also a big deal for authors is who's going to market my book.
Hmm.
If a publisher does that, they may say they are going to do it, or they may just put, a couple of postings on their website, and that might not really be what you were looking for.
Right. And so that's actually one of the things that I've heard as well in speaking with and interviewing a couple of independent authors up to this point, a good handful. Um, the one thing that they either enjoy the least about being an independent author or the one thing they did not expect about being an independent author is just the amount of marketing that it takes to really get those book sales and get your book out there and word of mouth and generating interest. Um, and so I can totally see that from my experiences in this whole space up to this point. Um, Also, from the editing side of things, marketing yourself as an editor, I think people would be curious to hear about that. Do you find that that's also a compounding factor there for being a freelance, trying to get into the indie author editing sphere, having to market your services? What does that look like for you?
It's a lesson in the balance of humility and confidence because
Mm.
I believe I'm very honest and ethical and hardworking. And I also know that my experience has largely been in copy editing, not so much in developmental editing. So a
Hmm.
couple of people I've told them that, I think I know what I'm doing with story arcs and plot development, but I don't have a huge portfolio of developmental edits in
Hmm.
my background. So um, I've tried to be kind of chill about it, but um, I've been posting in Facebook and LinkedIn and other social media sites to just get the word out there that I'm an editor and I'm available and I'm friendly and I do free sample edits. But it is hard to find clients, especially because money is such a factor.
Right.
So I understand that. If I was doing a book, I would totally understand that. So it's just I
Yeah.
think building a reputation for somebody that knows what they're doing.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. I think the first non-family member editing client I ever had, right? And the family members that I've worked with up to this point have obviously they've just been me kind of practicing those skills, working in this space and everything. But the first real client, we'll say, that I got was somebody who I had connected with on one of those like Facebook writers groups, writers editors groups, and it was a personal essay, and it wasn't even fiction related, which is kind of my what my experience and certificate that I have for editing has is in. And so it was a personal essay, not even in my sphere of genre, or anything like that. And she wanted a type of editing that I also did not have any like explicit training in. And so I just told her, exactly what you did, which is I'm going to be honest with you. This is what I can attest to. This is what I have in my portfolio. This is what I have as far as my training and skill set goes. I will do my best at this, and you can let me know how you feel about the process and everything like that, and we'll see how it goes. But my first ever client was not even anything that I had any sort of acumen for. Like, and sometimes it's just that's just what it is, starting somewhere and word of mouth and getting to that place.
A couple of times I've asked to give an eval on a short story
Hmm.
in exchange for somebody saying something on my website. Not my website, but my Facebook page.
Right.
So I traded
Hmm.
services for some sort of review.
Yeah. And that's just how you get started. And it's a slow
Mhm.
process and it can be very disheartening sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm
I think
blessed to
it's kind
have the
of,
steady work. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. What were you saying?
I'm blessed to have the steady work so the pressure isn't on me to find more clients. I would very much like to work for more fiction clients, but I have the steady work for the nonfiction publishers.
Yeah, that was exactly the point I was about to bring up was it's nice that you've got a balance between the two, right? So you've got the publisher side where you've, like you said, you've got that study clientele base work coming in, and it gives you a little bit of more freedom maybe to explore working with more indie authors in the fiction space. So before we
Yeah.
move on from you as an editor, I've got a couple more questions and then we can kind of get into some more fun topics. I would love to know the name inspiration for your editing services, Scarlet Quill Editing.
I didn't really want to just do Ariel Keith editing, so I just was playing around with some ideas and I saw so many creative names for other people's services and I've loved the color red. So I also played around with crimson ink and
Uh-huh.
and stuff like that. Red has been a big favorite of mine. So I was considering aspects of red, like ruby,
Hmm.
crimson, and I saw a picture of a scarlet quilt pen. So it's like for calligraphy,
Hmm.
and decided that I wanted to buy it. I bought it off Amazon, and I have that kind of as like my mascot.
I love that. I was also going to ask, so one of the things that occurred to me is so as part of editing, right? People think of like the red ink. Did that play into the factor at all, or was it really just a color that you loved, coincidentally?
Yes, I think so. Like I said, in 2002, when I first started proofreading, back then they would FedEx me paper manuscripts overnight, and I worked on them
Oh.
on physical paper with a red pen. So we've come a long way with how much paper we save with emailing, you know?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that had something to do with it. I just wanted something that also played into our authors are so creative, and I really feel that. And I want it to also appeal to the creative side of
hmm.
people who are trying to make a book. And I wasn't just a black and white, technical grammar person. I also appreciate, the world that they're trying to build with black and white words.
Right.
So I also found a picture of a Scarlet Quill pen on iStock, and I use that for my background in my Facebook page.
Perfect. I love that. The imagery that can be a whole clip right there of the world that they're trying to create with their black and white words, right? But creating a whole world of color out of that. That was that was beautiful. That was very well said.
Thank you.
So, as far as types of editing, so we kind of talked a little bit about the type of editing that you do for publishing, right? And then what you're trying to do to get into with fiction and investigating that. Um, what was the process like for you in going into those other types of editing that was more fiction related? What did that look like? Was it something you had to adjust to? Did you take extra classes, like, or was it something that maybe just you kind of get as a reader that you thought you had a knack for that coincides well with the other editing that you have from the publishing side?
Yes, all of that. I I've wanted to write a book for quite some time, and I don't have one written yet, but I've been reading aspects of story building from people like, you know, um, Stephen King and um, Anne Lamott wrote Bird by Bird. A lot of people have read that. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Story Genius by Lisa Cron. And so, what does it take to make a good story? And I've also been such an avid reader my whole life that I did feel like I had a good take on what was missing in this scene, or what would help this be better. Do you have too many supporting characters, stuff like that? So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had the background of I believe I know what a good story is, and then you're so used to proofreading and just taking the technical aspects of editing that you jump into a manuscript and you're like, oh my, can I make this better?
Mm-hmm.
And um, I just kind of had to start swimming.
Yeah.
And my rates weren't too high, so authors were willing to give me a try. And I also gave them free sample edits so they could see
Mm-hmm.
what they were getting into. Does this girl know what she's doing?
Right.
um, and the authors I've worked for have been quite happy and have all said they would be delighted to give me references. So I don't think I'm doing too badly. One author that wasn't too happy, she was doing, I'm just going to be, kind of tell a story on myself. She was doing a book in Canva. I didn't know
Okay.
you could format a book in Canva. And I was just really used to Adobe and Word,
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft Word and Google Docs. So it was a formatting and um, platform issue. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really know what I was doing entirely. And I didn't realize that the comments I was making in the manuscript weren't getting posted. They weren't live. I
Oh,
needed to click an extra button to post my comments. And then Word and Adobe, you're leaving comments in a
right.
document that you later email.
Uh-huh.
So it was a learning experience for both of us. And she was talented enough. She didn't really need me. She knew how to format stuff, and that was mostly what she was needing is formatting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's been a learning experience. It hasn't all been roses. That's why I told that story. Um, but yeah, I kind of just jumped in and said, I know what I'm doing, but I'll give a free sample edit to show you.
Amazing. And so, okay, now that has given me two more questions. The first I'll start with is you mentioned previously, I think it's a nice contrast there. When you first started publishing, or sorry, editing with the publisher, they would overnight you physical manuscripts that you would sit
Mhm.
down with pen to paper, and do that way. And now you've got this whole new somebody's writing a book on Canva, and it's a whole new formatting platform you've never seen before. So, since you've kind of gotten experience a little bit of both, right, and how drastically the authoring book writing world has changed just in this time frame, also from two different
Mhm.
aspects of both the academic and more of the fictional sphere. Um, what are your thoughts on that of just like the vast range that we've gone from point A to point B and how you have seen your job as an editor maybe change in light of that, if any, if at all?
Also, as a wannabe author, I'm just astounded by how many amazing titles there are out there. I kind of have
Yeah.
title envy. Some people come up with these great titles, and I'm just like, oh, I'm jealous. Um, also feel like it would be hard to enter that world. It's takes some courage to write a book and get it out there.
Hmm.
Um, I'm blessed by the convenience of technology where I can email editors and they can email me back questions. Whereas
Mm,
before, yes, I was emailing and yes, I could get questions answered, but we weren't both looking at the same piece of paper at the same time. They needed to
right.
kind of see it after I FedExed it back to them.
Hmm.
So I think as a whole, we've shortened the time for editing, and as a whole, it's exciting, but I don't know. Did I answer the questions?
Yeah, no,
I'm
that's
not
beautiful.
sure if I
Yeah,
remember.
that's a great point. I don't know if people realize sometimes how long it can take to write the book, but then also in taking that first draft of the manuscript, right? And then going through each round of editing that may or may not be required, but there could be multiple editing steps, right? Multiple drafts, revisions. And then there's, depending on if you're doing self-publishing or going with a traditional publisher, all the steps of creating the actual book, getting your cover art, your design, how you're going to do all of that, and then marketing it. And are you going to do a advanced reading campaign or, all these different things. Like I think sometimes it can be a misconception about all I have to do is write the book. Well, you've written the book. That is the first and sometimes the most difficult step. But I have also heard from lots of people that all the steps that follow between
Mhm.
getting your finalized or getting your first draft and then having a book, that can take its own amount of time. And so I think it's a really great point that the technology not only has it made it incredibly more accessible for anyone to write a story and publish it and share it with the world, it's also made it so much easier for all of those subsequent steps to be, collaborative and quick and efficient. Um, so yeah, I thought it was an interesting contrast. You're talking about being FedExed physical manuscripts, right? And then now here, we have all these tools for collaborating on one document together. It's crazy how much how far it's come.
Yes.
Yeah. Today, I've got indie author Jessie-Marie Heath on standby to share about her newest release in the Kingdom of Blue Moon series.
My name is Jessie-Marie Heath. I am the author of Secrets of the Blood Moon Prince. Many years have passed since Queen Willow has journeyed to Blue Moon. She has married and now rules the kingdom with her husband and their son, Prince Sanguinum. As their subjects begin randomly dying throughout the land, the prince is torn between a forbidden love and a quest to harness his mysterious powers and save his people. Will his decision or his parents' secret cost him the kingdom?
Now back to the podcast. Um, the other question that kind of you got me thinking about was something as an editor myself, right? It's always a bit of a tricky line to walk to figure out, but um, speak a little bit about what it's like to get a manuscript, right, and do like a manuscript evaluation or critique or helping authors figure out maybe what type of editing they should focus on, and that kind of stuff. It's always an interesting mix there of how to handle those types of situations where somebody hands you a manuscript and you as an editor have to let them know, this is what I think you need, this is what I think is worth the time and the effort, the money, all that kind of stuff.
I've done some sample edits for some people, and I thought, they've got a great start. This is really good stuff, and
Hmm.
it's not going to take too much, and it's going to be a book.
Hmm.
And the only thing really stopping them was whether they wanted to pay for an editor,
Hmm.
just an affordability issue. And then I've gotten some samples from some people, and my hat is off to every writer who's got the courage to put it out there. And I haven't done that yet, so I know it's hard. I've gotten some manuscripts from some authors. They were new at it and they needed a lot of development, but they thought they were at a stage where they just needed a quick proofread. And So you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You don't want to be insulting. You want to just be encouraging and say, this is where I
Hmm.
think you could use a little help, or, this needs more hook at the beginning. We need to know what the main character's internal drive is right at the beginning. And, in the first chapter, we need to know that. So I always try to be really encouraging and make sure people understand that I'm, I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to help.
Hmm.
But it doesn't always work. So,
Yeah. So for anyone who's listening, right, there's kind of four main types of editing. You've got your developmental editing, that's kind of the first step. Those are the big picture elements. Then you've
mhm,
got line editing, which kind of looks at the same things as developmental editing, but you do it more on a line by line basis. Then you've got copy editing, and then you've got proofreading. So those are kind of the four big ones, big steps for editing, and not every manuscript needs all of those. I always think that anyone could benefit from all four of those, right? Anytime you're having somebody else look at your manuscript to help you refine it is going to be time well spent. But like you're talking about, and one thing I've heard a lot too is just financially, that can be the biggest impediment for authors seeking out those services, right? So it's all about how you can work with the author to make sure that they are maximizing on their time and their budget to get the editing that's going to have the most payout for their story. So sometimes that's a difficult conversation to have with editor, or sorry, excuse me, with authors. And I was curious if that's kind of something you found in your experience as well.
yes,
Hmm.
yes. Um, I did a memoir style book for somebody, and it was true. So to some extent, he was correct in that he just wanted a copy edit. So I
Hmm.
did a copy edit with a copy line edit with aspects of developmental editing. But because he was sticking to true to life, you weren't gonna like develop the plot or take out
Right.
a supporting character. It was a memoir.
Hmm.
So I told him it was important. I thought his story was good, and I thought it was important to get it published for his family because it was kind of like a heritage thing. But I also just said, from the money making side of it, you
Hmm.
you can't expect like I was really really sweet about it, but you can't
Right.
expect to make a lot of money on this type of book. But if writing is
Right.
in your blood and you want to write another, this is a great first book. So
Absolutely.
you always want to balance the reality with the encouragement that, you go for it, get
Yeah.
it out there.
Yeah. And like you had mentioned there, like sometimes it's a blend of editing, right? And so if somebody's going to be spending the time and the money and the effort to work with you for editing something, right? Um, if you can wear multiple hats as you go through that, obviously it's important to be compensated for your time fairly and all the services you're offering. But sometimes it is a little bit of a blend of editing that's unique, and that's why it's important to pick the right editor who's going to be able to figure that out as they do, like work on a sample edit, like you were talking about. That'll give you not only does it give the author a chance to kind of, feel you out as an editor, but it gives you a chance to fill out what might be expected from the needs of the manuscript.
Right, exactly.
Perfect.
And sometimes the manuscript is beyond me. Like it's got a lot of intensity, maybe subject matter I don't want to work with, or maybe the
Hmm.
author is just so good. Okay, there's one instance where the guy was actually looking for a ghostwrite. He
Mm.
wanted a collaborator to help ghostwrite it with him. And he was skilled enough that I didn't think really had much to bring. I've never ghostwritten for anybody. I've never actually written the story.
Hmm.
So I just had to be scrupulously honest and say I don't want to disappoint anybody. I think your book has got a lot of potential, but I am a copy editor
Right.
and not a book editor.
Yeah. Well, and that
Not
goes
yet.
back
Not
to
yet.
what you were saying earlier about honesty being a very important principle for you. I'm sure personally and professionally. And so that's something that he'll probably remember. And next time he's ready for a copy edit, he'll probably come back to the person who was honest with him,
Yes,
Amazing.
I hope so.
So maybe that is kind of leading me into this next question I had for you, which is one I always love to ask is like, what is one thing that you did not expect about being a freelance editor?
Well, I guess I didn't expect People really look to me for guidance in the industry. Like,
Mm.
where do I go to get this published? How do I get covers made? Do you do formatting? So, in my work for the publishers, I've never had to do the formatting. That's done in a separate department.
Hmm.
So I tell them up front that me editing your book is not a guarantee of getting published, or and that I don't do formatting yet, but I've looked at the guidelines on Amazon and
Hmm.
Instagram Spark, and it doesn't look that hard. People are asking me, do I know good cover artists? So I've started to try to collate in my mind when an author that knows what she's doing also knows a cover artist that she likes. I'm going to
Hmm.
remember that name and maybe pass it on. Or I see an illustrator in LinkedIn and he's good. So if somebody asks me, do you know a children's book illustrator? I'm going to pass that on. So
Hmm.
people just are asking for word of mouth recommendations because it is a world of words, and recommendation from a real person means a lot.
Yeah. I that was actually one of the first few things I noticed. So, getting into doing all of this, right? I started off with Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and was looking at all of the different groups and posts and things. And I feel like it's so difficult nowadays to know if somebody is being genuine with you or not. If they're like scam pages or, somebody who's not actually like legit and things like that, like you get a mix. And so some of them are real people looking for the same things that you're looking and having really great recommendations. And then some of it is just confusing social media-ness. So, yeah, I think at least in my own experience, when I've made posts looking for recommendations of certain things, it can be really overwhelming to do it that way. Whereas if you have an editor who you know and trust, if they happen to have a recommendation of somebody who knows how to do formatting or cover art or anything like that, I can see how that would be a commonly asked question and things like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, as an editor, you're like I have my skills as an editor, right? It can be kind of shocking to be the person that suddenly is like the go-to for all of the questions about things that are not related to the skill set that you're being, paid to do. Do you have a favorite or least favorite part of being an editor?
Well, I value punctuality and promptness, and the publishers also value, making the deadlines, meeting the deadlines, making sure everything keeps going forward in their flow, so they don't, have a gap in their printing. Um, Authors are creative people, and so also probably also most of them have had day jobs.
Mm,
So the authors are trying to do in their evenings, review my edits, and I'm trying to do it in my day job. So I tell them that I have a rolling schedule and I accept work from other people. So I have to that helps keep my rates low. But if I'm waiting on you, then I start working on something else.
hmm
So one thing that I'm not like my least favorite thing, but it's a scary thing. What if my computer crashes and I lose a file, or what if I email it to somebody and it gets lost in the cloud? I don't think that really can happen, but um, my publishers always ask me to confirm receipt of an email,
hmm
make sure that you let me know you got it. So I've started to do that with authors when I send back manuscripts for them to peruse. I say, can you just let me know that you got it?
hmm
Um, so that we don't lose any work or time. A sweet client that I have, she was moving and she didn't see my return email because she was in the process of, basically changing her whole life. And
Mm.
so I was waiting for her to reply and she was waiting for me to email her, but she'd already gotten the email, but she didn't know it. So
No.
things like that. And that's just life and it's not that bad. Um, I don't know if I have a like most favorite thing. I guess I get to read books for a living and that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually leads me into some of my other questions that I had for you, which is just more on a personal note. You love reading. You're aspiring
Mhm.
author yourself. How did that start? What began your love of books?
I've just loved reading ever since I was very, very young. So I read voraciously everything I could get my hands on. My dad had hunting magazines. I read those. My mom had childbirth books. I read those. We had a very small library, and I read everything I could in that, and then started doing the interlibrary loan from other libraries.
Hmm. People sleep on libraries, I tell you.
I had friends that loved books, so I could borrow from them, and I was homeschooled, so a lot of my um, enjoyment time was reading. We just lived in the country. There's not a lot of people around us and everything. Um, so it's just always been a dream of mine to write a book that people would like,
Hmm.
and um, haven't felt like I was super creative, but I was good with the analytical side, so I started editing.
Do your children share that with you now? Do they love to read as well? Do you guys read together?
My oldest really did enjoy reading, and he would read Clive Cussler's and animal books. And um, he's busy now, working and going to school, so he's not reading right now. My daughter, my first daughter, she does like to read, and she wrote a story today as part of her creative writing assignment, and it was good. It was good because her personality is unfettered. She's not got that aspect of, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't know if this is good. It was her personality coming forth on the page, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, very genuine.
Hmm.
Do your kids, well, I guess in that instance, if she's got creative writing, was she excited for you to read it as both her mom and an editor?
I did not worry about the editing aspects because to me that's easy. So the creative aspect is so much harder to teach or to
Mm,
give the ground for. Like in school, you can teach math. It is pretty easy to tell whether you're taught it or not. But to teach creativity, you almost have to just give fertile ground for it and let
yeah.
their own minds learn how to create. It's not something that's easily just transmitted. So
Yeah.
I just try to encourage as much as possible. And I guess I should interject here that I'm homeschooling them, so I am their teacher.
Gotcha. That maybe loosely connected or maybe just in my brain, but it reminded me of, so again, as I was kind of looking over your website, your LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff, just to kind of help me prepare for speaking with you today. Your most recent, I think it's your most recent post that you made on Facebook and LinkedIn, which was about Thomas Jefferson writing the Declaration of Independence. Again, maybe this is only connected in my brain, but it popped up. I thought about it. You made that post, and it was all about how he wrote, that first line, which, everyone remembers, and how impactful and, remembered throughout history it is. And he had a first draft of that. And he's, this very intelligent man, very skilled writer. And that first line, there wasn't anything necessarily wrong with it, but, it was refined through the input of other people who were also, helping to draft that declaration. I loved your post about that. Do you just want to speak a little bit about the inspiration for that post? Because it kind of reminds me of this, it's like you can teach, you can work with people to like help edit and refine their work, right? But that laying the fertile ground for that creativity or that the raw materials that an editor can then help shape is kind of what you're hinting at, right? Or did I misunderstand?
No, I think you got it. I appreciate that you were paying attention to my posts. Everybody knows Thomas Jefferson was just this amazing person. He not only was, very educated and a good writer, but he also was into botany and he made sketches of plants and he was just like just completely amazing. So the point was is that some authors are so intelligent that they may feel like they don't need any help.
Mm.
And the point was just like another set of eyes on it. Everybody needs that. So I think,
Even
yeah,
Thomas Jefferson.
even Thomas Jefferson.
Yes. Okay. I'm just going to read out this part of the post because I thought you buttoned that perfectly. You said, authors, your intelligence or writing ability isn't questioned. A fresh set of eyes can make the difference between a soon forgotten manuscript and a popular bestseller. I thought, I mean, it's a great point, right? It's like getting an editor, right, and going through that process with your manuscript doesn't mean that you're a bad writer. But what it is so interesting is that in the process of writing, um, you're taking the thoughts that are in your head and you're putting them down on paper. And in that process, there's definitely like refining, like you learn more about your own thoughts, about yourself. Like it's very self-revealing, but it's all still within you. It's all still self-contained. And then you're taking that and you're giving it to thousands and millions of other people for them to read it. Um, And so I think one of the things that I remember learning about when I was doing my training to become a developmental editor was just how, as a editor, you have to be thinking about how readers, plural, non-specific readers, are going to receive a story, which can
Mhm.
sometimes be very difficult from the perspective of an author who it's a very personal writing experience. And so I think you
Mhm.
just that post kind of highlighted that perfectly of, honoring the author's, original intention, their intelligence, their creativity in writing that, but still acknowledging that this is still a work that exists within you and it has to be read by hundreds of other people.
Mhm.
Yeah, I loved that post.
Yeah,
Anyway, I took a
it's
picture of
all it's
it.
all in the author's head. So to get it out on the page, when it's all they completely see what they're doing. So to get it out on the page so the reader can see it, sometimes everybody does it. It's not particular
Hmm.
to anybody. Everybody does it, but um, they sometimes can forget a detail, or maybe they say it
Mm.
late in the story, and you're like, wait a minute, did you know that detail at the beginning? And they're like, yes. Was it not there? I've even had
Mm.
authors say, I thought it was there. Like, for
Wow.
instance, a character's hair color. I said, it's okay if you don't want to describe how she looks. I get it, and that works. But if you do want to, I don't know what her hair color is.
Yeah.
So they're like, really? It should be there. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, it's not. Okay, let's put that in.
Right. Yeah, it's the quintessential forest for the trees. You get so hyper focused on the thing that you're creating that you lose the objectivity of somebody who is not in your own head.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I loved that post. I had it written down that I wanted to ask you about it, but for some reason what you're talking about is like laying that fertile ground for the creativity. It's harder to teach creativity. It's easier to do the editing aspect afterwards. It kind of reminds me of that post and um, loved it. You also do a really fun, I'm forgetting, like a series of posts where you'll like highlight a fun word that is something that, you see as often like as a mistake or something that in manuscripts that are just, fun words for people to keep an eye out on. So I see those and I like them.
Thank you.
Of course,
Yes,
yeah.
it's kind of a dry world. Editing can be quite dry. So I was trying to just put as much color and life and humor into it as I could.
Yeah. I think you're doing a great job. I love it. I don't know if you know this, but so when I first started creating all of my social medias specifically for the editing side of things, um, you were like one of the first people that I found and started following, and I loved your content. So when I realized that I was like, the podcast is happening, I didn't intend for it to, but here we are. I was like, I definitely wanted to reach out to you. So I'm glad that I
Thank
got to.
you. I'm blessed. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Um, do you find that that's a common misconception for authors who are reaching out to you, who they think that editing is a scary critique process, where they're nervous to work with an editor and what editing means. Is that a conversation that you've had to have with authors before?
I think editors to some extent have gotten a little bit of a bad rap of being critical and,
Mhm.
making corrections and taking over. So I try to really assure authors that my hat is off to you. This is your baby, and I am only here to help polish it. I am not here to take over your story. If you don't like my suggestions, and I don't expect an author to like everything I say. So if
Mhm.
they tell me, no, this is the way I like the character, or yeah, I intend it for that scene to be that way, then I'm chill. It's good. Um, if it's like a grammar thing or a punctuation capitalization thing, then
Mhm.
I'll say, this is the technical rule, but it's up to
Right.
you.
Right.
So I just try to reassure them that you're never going to feel condemnation, or you're not going to feel bad about my edits. If you don't like them, that is your call. I serve you and not the other way around.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah, it can be a fine line to walk sometimes. The last question I have for you is perhaps another very fun one. Book recommendations. So I know it's hard because we all love books and we all love several books, but if there's like 2 to 3 books that you would just love to kind of give a shout out or that you think would be helpful for people, yeah, what are your 2 to 3 of your go-to book recommendations?
For fiction or writing stories.
Oh. Let's go with fiction.
Okay. I did see the question. I did try to prepare. Um, I've I'm a woman, so I do enjoy romance. And when it comes to
Absolutely.
romance, I would say, um, well, I really like Francine Rivers, and she's a Christian author, but she's really good.
Hmm.
And I'll say, but she's really good. She is really good. And
Absolutely.
then, but as also a mom of boys, a wife for 22 years, and a sister of brothers, I really like not just ooey gooey books, romance and
Hmm.
everything, but I also like John Grisham and Michael
Oh,
Crichton.
yes.
So because the editing author world has lots of men authors, I want to read books that are written by men and what men would read too.
Hmm.
Because I feel like one of the aspects of being a good editor is not just approaching this as a woman, but as a person. So yes, it's easy to edit in romance. I know what I want to read,
Hmm.
but I also want to be able to edit in thrillers and mystery. And so I do read John Grisham and I enjoy him very much. He's so good.
Yeah.
Michael Crichton, I just got a book from the library that was posthumously published. He started it and then had his widow had James Patterson finish it. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I've read some James Patterson. I haven't read John Grisham or Michael Crichton, but I've heard of both of them. And so I wrote down their names and I started it so that I can look at that for next time I'm reading a fiction book. Okay. Last two questions. The first one is, are there any, this was also a question in the primer, but are there any questions, or sorry, any lessons that you learned as an editor that kind of made a personal impact on you?
I've noticed in the range of people being beginners and being experienced writers, I've noticed that the experienced writers that are already know what they're doing, probably more so than I do, they are willing to accept suggestions, no problem. It's like they want to be better and they're not insulted or anything. And I am very friendly with my suggestions. But beginner writers, they start stringing sentences together, and I do not mean this disparagingly, but they're just starting. And
Hmm.
they're ready to publish this book and maybe they've gotten half a page written. I am not exaggerating you. I've had people reach out to me, they're like, I'm so excited. I'm starting a book. I've written a page. And they need quite a bit. And they're not really able or willing to um utilize helps at that time. So it's just a lesson in humility for me that you can always learn. And it's
Absolutely.
no one's trying to make you feel bad.
Yeah. And I think that ties back to something we were talking a little bit about earlier, which is just it's so accessible now to write and publish a book. Whereas,
Yeah,
10 years ago, it was not the same story, and now it is. And so that comes with, people being able to publish a lot of books without having all of those steps in the process that kind of help refine it. And so maybe, like you're talking about, a little bit, some more seasoned authors have been through those processes a little bit more and have the
right.
wisdom of that to kind of help inform them on those things. Whereas younger authors who are doing it for the first time, well, not necessarily younger, but younger as in first time doing it. Right, maybe they're not exposed to all the different steps that it can take and how the humility that that takes. I love that. That's a really strong insight, which will
Great.
lead me to my last question. Um, what is a piece of advice, doesn't have to be the biggest or the best, or just a piece of advice that you would like to leave for someone who is aspiring to be an editor, kind of in the same vein that you are?
I would say that learning to recognize a good story comes from reading good books, and I think that's
Mhm.
pretty well said across the writing world. They say breathe it in and then breathe it out. So read good books as an editor, just as much as an aspiring writer.
Hmm.
And then I read Lisa Cron's Story Genius really recently, and she is able to kind of explain how even intelligent, good writers have a hard time getting a story on the page that connects with readers. And why is that? Because we all instinctively seem to understand a good story when we see one or hear one. So
Hmm.
where's the little disconnect that's making this so hard?
Hmm.
And she's able to kind of break it down. And I just really recommend Lisa Cron's Story Genius as something that will help not just writers, but editors, because writers are looking to editors to say, where does my story need help? What does a
Mm,
reader want? So you almost have to know how to write one to be an editor because it's more than just the grammar and the punctuation. So
right.
much more than
That's amazing. Yeah, and I love ending this on that. It's the editing, I think for a lot of people who aren't doing it or haven't been in that, um, don't realize that like you're right. It's so much more than just editing. It's you almost have to be in that same mindset of the author of how do you build a good story? How do you form a good story? You're just helping out with clay that somebody else has already started to form. You're
Mhm.
adding to it. You're helping reshape what is already there.
And when an author feels like you feel their voice and you want their story to succeed,
Hmm.
they're much more likely to take your advice. Like I had one sweet client, I did a editing pass and I sent the manuscript back to her and she was going to peruse my suggestions, but then I had another idea about something. So I texted her. I emailed her and I said, your story's living in my head and I just thought of this. Do
Oh.
you want to incorporate it or whatever you want to do? And she's like, I'm so flattered
Hmm.
that you're thinking about this even when you're like not on the clock. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Alrighty. Well, Ariel, I don't want to take up any more of your time, so I really appreciate getting to talk with you. Like I said, you were one of the first people that I started following when I myself was starting to get into freelance editing. So this has been a long time in the coming for me. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated getting to talk to you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
I think that about covers it. I'm really blessed to be included, and thank you for interviewing me. It's been fun.
Of course, yeah. And where can people find you? Where would you like to direct them to?
Most my longest standing social media is my Facebook page, Scarlet Quill Editing, or you can look up Ariel Keith on LinkedIn. And Scarlet Quill Editing on Facebook will be more towards fiction editing, whereas LinkedIn will be geared more towards um, academic publishing, nonfiction.
Hmm.
So a little drier, but yeah, it's
I've loved those posts. Those are some of the posts you get where you get to see the fun words, yeah, fun word posts. But yeah, perfect. I'll make sure that all the stuff is linked in the notes and everything like that. So, amazing. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.